Hi, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Campfire Guide to Parenting. I'm your host, Mike McDonell, president of Kid Venture. And last time, we talked about raising emotionally healthy kids, helping them stay steady and connected in a world that moves fast. And today, we're shifting gears to something every parent wants for their kid: grit, the ability to face tough moments, awkward phases, and the curveballs of growing up while not falling apart. Right. And so to help me dig into this, I'm joined today by my dear friend and colleague in the past, Michael Blasdell. Michael, how you doing?
I'm doing great. It is so great to be here. I'm really honored that you're having an average Joe like me on to help talk about this.
Michael, you are nothing average. There's nothing average about you. I promise you that. Just a little background, Michael. He's a husband, father of two middle school age kids. He has worked with children most of his adult life, beginning at age 18. He was with Kid Venture. He grew up as a camp counselor, a camp director. He was a leader in the Kid Venture organization. And now today he's an educator, an assistant principal in the Houston area. He's worked in the classroom administration. He's a great dad. And he's somebody who believes that life is going to give you what you look for, right? And he tries to focus on finding the positive in situations. And if there's anything that I can remember about you, Michael, back in the day, it's that you were always positive, man. You saw the positive in everything, which is why I think you're perfect for this topic today on grit. So thanks for being here, Michael.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right, we're going to dive right into it. I think grit is sort of hard to come by these days. And I know I make myself sound like the old guy in the room, right, when I say that. But having grit, right, having this ability to move past the problems, the roadblocks, the bottlenecks that our lives inevitably have in front of us is a great skill, right? And it's a learned skill. Michael, when you look at kids who are developing grit, someone who's learning how to handle the hard stuff, what does that actually look like for you?
It looks like failure and getting back up. It's all about progress over perfection. I'm not going to be great at something the first time I try it. And I'm going to struggle. I'm going to need to go and ask for feedback. I'm going to need to ask for help. And that's what I want to coach my kids to do, is understand that it's okay to fail, but it's not okay to give up. And as long as we're taking feedback and we're improving, we're on the right track. Life is a race and we got to get over those hurdles.
Right. Absolutely. And I do believe what you bring up, I think, is super important. Developing grit begins at home, but there's a lot of other landscapes, whether that's camp or that's school, where we learn grit or we face grit or the opportunity to develop grit. You've got girls that are in middle school. My youngest is now in middle school. And just talking about this topic is going to make my palms sweat. And I sort of feel this creeping anxiety come into me. Right. But for me, I think a lot of kids, middle school is this crossroads time, right? This exciting but really awkward time where we're transitioning from childhood to maybe older adolescence, right? And in some ways, it's a training ground, right? In a landscape where we're learning and taking on grit. Describe for us, because you got kids in middle school, I want to hear from you, why middle school naturally stretches our kids, the friendships they're making, their identity they're developing. Talk to me about that a little bit.
So I think about the structure of middle school and what that's like moving from elementary. In elementary, you're going everywhere in a straight line, bubble in your mouth, hands behind your back, level zero in the hallway. There are these really firm expectations on how you act, and you have people alongside you throughout the entire journey. When you get to middle school, you're taken out of the aquarium and thrown into the ocean. You're not walking in straight lines anymore. Your schedule, and it's like, good luck, don't be late. And that's a lot to navigate. And on top of that is you're going somewhere, usually a much bigger school, with people you don't know. Like my oldest daughter, when she started middle school, she had 4 classes with people she knew, and there was and it was maybe only 3 kids in her class. So you're automatically exposed to all sorts of people who you had no previous interactions with. And day one, you're working together in groups. You're doing projects together. You're trying to figure out who your tribe is. And that can be really difficult, especially when you've had a comfortable life.
Right. And I love the analogy out of the aquarium and into the ocean. That's really what it feels like, right? And in 5th grade, maybe they give you one field trip to the middle school for 3 hours, and that's your peek into the world that you're fixing to get indoctrinated into the next year. It's also, and let's talk about that sort of social pressure, right? You're put into a situation with new kids, with new schedules, with a newfounded sense of independence where not everybody's holding your hand. You got to navigate that, right? In your experience, how do you think kids learn to handle those tough social moments without crumbling, without making the whole thing their identity?
One thing I've tried to do with my kids is just tell them, you can talk to me about whatever. because we can fix a mistake, but we can't fix something when you're not here. So if you don't tell me what's going on in your life, you have to navigate it alone. So talk to me. And I had this experience with my daughter, one of my daughters last year, where there was a friend, they had a falling out. Just he decided, hey, I don't want to be friends with this girl anymore. She let her know, which could have handled that better. He did. And this girl started, and I'm going to beat you up. I'm going to jump you, started texting a bunch of kids. And and then those friends were then sending my daughter screenshots. And this was a big learning experience for me and for her because I'd never had to
Right.
navigate this. And I just said, first, don't text these people sending you screenshots because if they're doing it to her, they'll do it to you. And so don't get involved in that. Second,
Yeah.
you can deal with this or I can. So either I can go to your school and let them know what's going on and tell them I want it handled, or you can go to your AP and say, hey, I need help. How do you want to handle
How
it?
did she respond to that specific question?
She said, I'll handle it. And then
Right.
the next day she went in, she talked to her counselor, showed the screenshots. My wife got a call from the assistant principal that there was something going on and they were handling it and they were doing
Right.
restorative circles. And it was fine. Girls aren't friends today. But I was just really proud because I gave her an out to say, this is your first time dealing with
Yeah.
this. I can help you. And but if I would have just jumped into it and said, oh, I'm on it, I'm going to be a lawnmower and cut down everything in your path so that you don't
Right.
have a hard life.
What would she have learned in that other than it
Yeah.
takes somebody else to take care of my
Yeah.
own problems, right?
And I see that builds trust for her with other adults
Right.
because now she knows when she has an issue, I've shown her she can come to me and she's seen that she can go to other trusted adults in her life. And she doesn't necessarily need me for that.
No, that's a great point. And I think the other thing too there, backing up a little bit, I think it's real
Mhm.
easy for a parent to just assume that those types of social situations for a kid, especially middle school, we can just
Mhm.
chalk those up to drama. And I've been guilty of that in the past before too. But what we might deem as drama are real important integral situations for our kids socially, right? And they're trying to
Mhm.
navigate those things sometimes for the first time, right? Hard
Yeah.
enough for adults to navigate relationships. Imagine what it's like when you're a 13-year-old in middle school, right? And so for you to
Yeah.
recognize that was an important thing happening in her life and taking the steps that you did, I think is real impressive, by the way.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. But it's just, if my kids are talking to me, I got to listen.
Well, for sure. Now, I've got 4 kids of my own. As a parent,
Mhm.
we learn how to parent our kids over time, right? There's no doubt in my mind that,
Mhm.
and sorry, McKenna, my first child, I'm a better
Mhm.
parent with my 4th child than my first child because I'm learning as a parent as I move
Mhm.
along, right? I remember coming home from the hospital with my first child, McKenna, to drive home. I must have driven 10 miles an hour. I think people were honking at me the entire way home, right? When she fell down, I'm almost confident that I probably ran and immediately picked her up. By my 3rd kid, I was like, you good? Get up. It's totally different, right? How do we know when to step in and when to let our kids handle something on our own? You talked about it, giving
Yeah.
your kid that choice, right? And I think
Mhm.
this is a balancing act for parents, right? So how do we know when to step in, let that kid handle something on their own, or maybe do more?
Well, one of my favorite things about being a parent is no matter what you do, you're doing it wrong in somebody's eyes.
Right.
People are going to can criticize me for how I raise my kids and things, but I'm doing what I think is best for them. And I do things to raise my kids differently. My oldest daughter needs different things than my younger daughter does. And
Hmm.
that's okay because they're different people. And if I'm not meeting them where they are, I can't get them to where they need to be. So my oldest daughter, we got her in therapy. And it's been great. That's been a huge help because I don't have all the answers. And there's been so much growth from that. My youngest daughter, we're not necessarily there yet, but we're able to learn from what we've done in the past and really figure out the next step forward because I've messed up. I've done things that have hurt my own kids' feelings. I've prioritized things in ways that I shouldn't have. And I have to reflect as a parent of what's my goal and did my actions help me move toward my goal? And if they don't, I got to apologize to my kid and try to be better next time because part of grit is making mistakes and owning it. And
Yeah.
I
That-
cannot, kids are going to do what they see. And if I'm never wrong, or if I never admit I'm wrong, they're going to go through life not being able to admit that. So
Gosh,
I
and I
have to
think
be the model.
I'm sorry to interrupt you right there, but that one part of what you just said, I think is probably one of the most powerful lessons we can give our kids, right? And that's watching and demonstrating from their parents when they're wrong, right? Apologizing to
Mhm.
your kid, owning it up. We have this thing in our family, right? And
Mhm.
I think you use the same words, right? We have this term that we use a lot in our family. We call own it, right?
Mhm.
My kids understand That means that if you screw up, right? If you let someone down, if you hurt somebody intentionally or unintentionally, that you should own up to
Mhm.
that mistake, right? Then they figure out a way to make it right. And I think that teaching this sort of accountability is super important, but it can be hard for parents to navigate, right? I almost feel like we live in a time where so many people want to blame others for their actions and so few
Mhm.
people want to take responsibility. Heck, we can look to our leaders who don't want to take responsibility for their own actions, right? But I think that's so important. And the most powerful way to do that, in my opinion, and I think you reflected this a moment ago, is man, just saying to your kids, I screwed up, right? And I made a mistake and I own that. And I'm sorry for that. And what do I need to do to make it right? Because
Yeah.
we can tell our kids to do stuff, but they don't see us do it, right? It's a whole different ball game, right? So how does that accountability that we're trying to teach our kids tie into grit? And what does that look like
Mhm.
when a kid actually takes ownership of their choices? Talk to me about that.
So I see an effort to do replacement behaviors. If we did something we shouldn't and we've taken ownership of that, we're replacing that previous behavior with something new. If one of my daughters is yelling at her sister at something and we have that conversation, we're not supposed to talk to people that way. I see her start to take a deep breath and maybe talk aggressively through gritted teeth. That's progress. Now, that's not the end line, but I can see she's making adjustments there. And one thing that's worked in my favor is I've always tried to build up the character traits I want to see in those kids. If a kid doesn't, kid struggles with self control, they're not going to learn self control by saying you can't control yourself. They're going to learn self control by understanding they can. Hey, I saw that you were really focused on playing Fortnite there for 30 minutes. That shows me you have self control because you can attend to a task. I see that you were able to hold back on that pitch instead of swinging at it. That shows me you have self control. Kids have a voice of who they are in their head, and that voice echoes what people say about them. I want my kids to speak positively about themselves because there are a
Right.
billion people in the world who can say mean things. We don't need to be one of those people. So
Yeah.
we got to point out what we want to see.
I think that's great. And there's so many opportunities, it seems like, for kids to be put in situations maybe that are awkward, that are
Mhm.
uncomfortable, and try to come out on the other side of that having a greater sense of self confidence, right? And I'm going to go back to middle school for a moment. This is a story that I thought about earlier today when I was thinking about our time with you. I remember in middle school, we were having a dress up day, and I think it was probably Halloween that was coming up, right? And everybody in the school was going to dress up for Halloween and come to school, right? And if everybody's going to do it, then it's cool, right? So I got my costume together, and I think I was actually dressing up as Dee Snider from Twisted Sister, 80s
Nice.
hair band, for those of you guys who want to Google that later on, right? And so I show up to school, full makeup, hair probably teased out, and I realize as soon as I walk up to school that I got the wrong day. So now I am Dee Snidered at school on a regular day, and no one else is dressed up. And I'm sure I got all of this in the hallway the entire day and
Mhm.
that kind of thing. Because when you're in middle school or an adolescent for that much, man, you are so hyper aware of what you're looking
Mhm.
like and what you're acting like and what you say. But you know what? I survived it, right? And I got to go to school the next day and it turned out in being a joke. By the way, no one had a cell phone then too. So no one could actually
Yeah.
record it or post it to their Instagram picture, which is a great bonus, by the way. But middle school and so much of school just can be awkward. And there can be all these awkward situations for kids. So let's go back to what you were talking about a
Yeah.
second ago. How do we help our kids push through those awkward, socially weird sort of situations without trying to smooth every uncomfortable moment out of them?
When I was growing up, there was the term helicopter parents that were always coordinating everything for their kids. The term now is lawnmower parents because they mow down any obstacle in their kid's way. And you can't do that. Do you want your kid to have thick skin or do you want your kid to have a suit of armor? I want my kid to have a suit of armor. I want my kid to have a high sense of self. I don't want, because if I have thick skin, that means I have a low opinion of myself and I can take what you say about me because I've said worse. I want to have my kid to have a suit of armor because they are protected by their own vision of who they are.
Right.
We're all going to screw up. I didn't participate in activities because I was nervous people would make fun of me. I never did theater. I never did a lot of things that I was interested in because I was more concerned about what other people thought of me than what made me happy. And now it's like, I'm at a wedding, I'll dance. I'll go out there. The worst thing that's going to happen is people are going to have a good time laughing with me because I'm able to laugh at myself because I'm there for a good time. And it's really hard for a kid because who your peers view you as is really important. When you're a little kid, it's your parents' view of you, your parents' attention, your parents' love.
Right.
And that's where you find your sense of self. As you get into those middle school years, and I don't know how scientific this is, but as you get into those middle school years, your identity is really shaped by your peer and your peer groups and your friends.
Right.
And then as you get older, you internalize who you are more and you're able to say, this is who I am as a person, no matter what everybody thinks of me. And it really is like you got to build them up. I have parents at my school that I hear them coming in and dropping them off. Remember, you're covered in the blood, or hey, you're loved, or you can do hard things. Like these parents are giving their kids just these little positive motive, just positive statements. And it seems like such a little thing, but it's so big to start somebody's day with, you're an amazing person because of who you are.
That's really interesting that you're hearing those things from those parents as they're dropping them off. And it makes me think about, there's all these different landscapes, right? Where we
Hmm.
have the opportunity to teach grit. Camp, for example, right? And I think
Hmm.
camp is in some ways maybe a more natural place to teach grit, just the way camp is
Hmm.
set up, right? We create an environment where successes and failures are both valued. It's a place
Hmm.
where it's encouraged to try new things, whether that's rock climbing or archery or sitting around a campfire. Man, pushing yourself and taking a risk is sort of baked into camp, right? And school's not that way, right? And you've
Hmm.
seen both, right? You've helped develop kids for decades now in both
Hmm.
camp and school, right? How does grit get built in each of those places? How do you think that differs?
So in the camp setting, it's a weird environment. And I think that this is something I've always carried with me as a counselor, as a director that you said, is that when you take on this leadership role at camp, you're not a teacher, you're not a parent, you're like this weird adult in charge, but goofy and fun. These kids have never experienced
You're
before
an enigma,
because like every adult in my life has been related to me or super serious or
right?
something like that. And now I'm here and there's this 20-something-year-old singing these ridiculous songs, doing this ridiculous dance, getting pied in the face. And then they're
Right.
leading me through an art project.
Yeah.
Or I had a disagreement with this person and they're having a restorative conversation with me. Like,
Right.
is this? And so at camp, it's very structured, but it's also unstructured.
Mm.
And we're also looking at desired tasks. Everything that's done in camp is a desired task. And there's not a grade associated with it. Everything's graded by how much fun did I have? How
Sure.
much did I participate? Then at school, there are strict expectations. There are grades and indicators that go along with that. And you're in this environment where the adult is the authority, needs to be treated that way and treated like an authority. And that structure makes it really hard to not be successful
That's a great point.
because there's something tied to it. And there's pressure coming at you from it. When you get in the car after camp, we ask our kids, like, oh, did you have fun? What'd you do? When you get in a car after school, how was the test? What do you think you got? Did you focus in class? The kind of questions you ask are different. And so I would say if I really want to use school to help build grit in my kids, I ask, what's something you struggled with today that you think you'll do better tomorrow?
Yeah.
And focus it on that. What support do you still need to be successful in this?
I agree. The opportunity for growing grit, right, can take place anywhere, right? And I
Hmm.
want to go back to where I think it takes place most importantly. And I think that's at home, right? Because
Hmm.
what we teach our kids at home and the lessons that we try to give them at home can be applied anywhere, whether that's school or whether that's camp or in their personal lives, right? And I want to shift
Hmm.
our talk now to sort of practical ways that parents can help build grit at home. And I want to talk to you about that. So what are a few simple things parents can start doing this week to help their kids handle the tough stuff better? Let's talk about that.
Well, if you haven't listened to episode 1 or 2 yet, go back and listen because you're going to hear this in both of those episodes. Sit down to dinner together and have a conversation.
Yeah.
Put the screens away, turn off the TV,
Mm.
and talk. We go around and it's like, what was your favorite part of the day? Hey, Dad, my kids will ask me, hey, did you have a hard day today? What was something you struggled? Were there struggles today? They ask me those questions because they know how stressed I can be and how I wear it on my sleeves.
Right.
But
Yes.
it shows that they have learned from our conversations how to interact with others and show genuine interest.
Mm.
So, first and foremost, if you're not doing it, have dinner together. Even if you start with just 1 or 2 days a week, because I know moving people's cheese, that can be really difficult. Have those dinner time conversations. You could just if you have 4 basic questions, what was your favorite part of the day?
Yeah.
What's something somebody did that made you feel good? What's something you can do better tomorrow?
Right.
And those 4 questions frame for great conversations.
Oh, they do. And they're so much more effective than just asking, "What did you do today?"
Mm.
You know what I mean? That usually doesn't pan out very well at the dinner table for us. Having those questions that are much more pointed, like you said, I think open up the opportunity for discussion for my kids at least.
And the next thing I would say is responsibilities.
Yeah.
And my kids, I really struggled to get them to help with chores. And
Mm.
so I had to pay them for basic chores. Like you do your laundry, that's $3, $1 for the wash, $1 for the dry, $1 for the fold and put away. You unload the dishwasher, top rack's $1, bottom rack's $1. That's how we started it. Now I just set a reminder on Alexa to unload the dishwasher. It gets done. Nobody's tallying dollars. They just like I had to meet them where they are and motivate them, right?
Sure.
I know
Okay.
some people they have a different perspective on that.
Yeah.
But for me, it's to motivate them to want to participate. I had to meet them where they were. Now they understand that it is a caring thing to do to unload the dishwasher or to
Yeah.
sweep the floor.
Right.
They are responsible for their laundry. When their clothes are dirty or they have an outfit they want to wear,
Right.
they bring their hamper down and they get it started. If they lose track of it, I'll finish it or I'll move it over. But you got to meet them where they are and incentivize them where they are.
Well,
And then they'll grow into that responsibility.
and they're learning work. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Down to the basics here, they're learning
Yeah.
to work. And for some people, work is hard. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Work makes them unhappy.
I'm a putterer at home.
Some of the happiest people I know in my life enjoy
Mhm.
work. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? They don't think of it as a negative thing. They think of it as a
Yeah.
positive thing. The other thing that I kept thinking about too, and you were talking about this earlier, is just embracing failure. Teaching your
Mhm.
kids that failure is part of life, right? And that we shouldn't avoid it. Yes, we should try to do well, but when failure comes, we embrace failure because it's a part of
Mhm.
life and we're human beings and we're going to fail. And how you respond to that failure is going to
Yeah.
determine your level and amount of grit, right?
Yeah.
And are there ways that you try to teach your kids that failure is part of life?
So we try to focus on there are small mistakes and big mistakes, right? And if we catch things in small mistakes, we can prevent them from becoming big mistakes.
Right.
And it really is just the effort that you put into it. One of my daughters, she's got some low grades in school, and even though I'm an educator, I'm pretty hands off with my kids' schoolwork. I trust them to do their work. They're getting good grades. I'm not like, I don't care if you get an A, B, or C as long as you do your best. But we have firm parameters of what your best looks like, right? You can't not study and say you did your best. Brought home some low grades. So I was like, hey, I'm going to help you with this because there's a struggle right now. And
Right.
so we're going to go over some materials together. I brought some activities home.
Mhm.
She did. She showed me she knew what she was doing. It was just a one-off thing. We're good. But I think addressing and being attuned to where they are and what they're struggling with is really helpful for that. Also,
Yeah.
a lot of times it's hard to know when somebody's struggling because kids internalize a lot. And I talk to a lot of parents who call me because their kid is getting made fun of or somebody's being mean to them or rude to them, and it's been going on for weeks. And it's like, well, what could we do to make sure this kid knows they have somebody to talk to about it?
Sure.
Is that a teacher? And I go to the teacher. Does the teacher know about it? Or who are their friends? Who do they talk to? They need to have someone that they can safely talk to. I want that person to be my wife or myself. We can fix any mistake. It may hurt, but it's not going to hurt more than it needs to because it's growth. You're a
That's
kid right now.
It's a really good point. And once again, it comes back to just communication, creating opportunities to communicate
Mm.
with your kids so they know that communication is the right path forward, right? Another thing that I really feel like is an actionable item that parents can do tonight is praising effort and not just results. Right.
Mhm.
I think one of the things we tend to do as parents is focus on the results. Wow, great job at the game. You scored 10 baskets, right? Wonderful. Or they bring home a great grade on a test. Man, amazing. You got a 93 on
Yeah.
the test. Rather than going, you know what? You really worked hard to get that grade, right? And I think that's another way, it's a slight shift, right, in
Mhm.
parenting, but praising the effort and not just the results
Yes.
lets a kid know that really it's the work, right, effort that I put in that made the results happen, not just that the results magically happened, right?
Oh.
And I think somewhere in there, the development of grit happens when they know that it's the effort that went into making the results come to fruition, right?
Yes, 100%. And I saw this with my daughter this season with softball. She plays in a league with 12 to 16-year-olds. And so some of these girls that are pitching, they're really whipping that ball in there. And she's on the younger side of things.
Right.
And this is her first year seeing softballs being thrown that hard while she's in the batter's box. And so it took a while. We were going to batting cages. We were practicing at practice. We're doing all the things, but it's just, she would get in that batter's box and she wouldn't swing. And so it just kept reinforcing, hey, it's okay to swing if you strike out, but at least you went down swinging.
Right.
And
Right.
and we had our last game of the season on Monday, and she went down swinging. And at the end of the game, I was like, I'm so proud of you. You made an effort. You
Awesome.
tried to get the hit. You didn't wait to get walked. And the thing about life is you don't try and fail once and then try again and be successful. 2 steps forward, 1 step back is still 1 step forward. And if we only ever focus on results, we teach our kids and we train them that what they put out
Yeah.
into the world matters, that they are a cog in a machine,
Right.
and that they are only valued because of the value they bring other people. But if we can say, hey, you still didn't reach that benchmark of success, but I saw how hard you tried, and this is where I saw you grow, that makes the world of difference. Because if my kid comes home with an F on a test and then they study and they get an A, and all I talk about is that A, I'm not solidifying what it took to get an A.
Right.
I'm just
For
solidifying that A's
sure.
are good.
For
But if I
sure.
say you come home with an F and then you're spending time studying with me, I saw that you dedicated time to study, that you went to tutorials, that you asked your teachers questions.
Mm.
That's what I'm proud of. I knew the A was going to happen eventually.
Yeah.
What I didn't know was going to happen was how you were going to earn it. And the way you earned it is what made me proud.
That's great. Love that stuff, man. And so while we're talking about how we as parents can help our kids gain this grit, right?
Mhm.
I think it's important to note, and I would be remiss, that we as adults can and should also be present enough to learn from our kids, right?
Mhm.
As parents, we get lazy, right? We
Mhm.
slack off, right? And sometimes our kids are the ones that remind us, how to persevere. Recently, and goes back to grades too as well. My youngest, Michael's been struggling with math, right? Since he
Mhm.
started 6th grade. He could have folded and completely melted down over the struggle, right? Because he got some bad grades, right? But dude put his head down, right? And he made some huge improvements, went to tutoring after class. He loves to play. They have a little recess right after lunchtime
Mhm.
and they go play Gaga, man. And that's just his jam, right? And he gave that up to go sit with the math teacher and work on that. And recently got a really good grade. And I've thought about that. You know what I mean? At least I'm humble enough to see if he can do it, I can do it too. Because there's certainly times in my life that I slack off and I don't persevere and I don't have enough grit. And I think it's important
Mhm.
as a parent, that's a two-way street, not just a one-way street. You know what I'm saying?
I tell my kids all the time that I'm lucky I'm raising them and not me, because I'm able to see how they handle things and how they learn from their mistakes. And it's just like, all right, seeing how my daughters ask for help makes me not afraid to go to my principal and say, hey, what should I do here? Seeing because parenting is not a one-way street where I am just putting
Right.
into my kids
Right.
and then they turn into someone better. I'm also pulling from my kids.
Sure.
I'm also seeing what they're doing. And just, it really is awe inspiring to see this generation, because I know there's a lot of things working against them.
Sure.
Technology, social pressures, lack of organized activities. Growing up as a latchkey kid, riding my bike to the pool every day in middle school, just staying at the pool all day, hanging out with people, going around the neighborhood, doing things I probably shouldn't have. Yet that's not an experience our kids have. But to see them navigate this incredibly complex world is really inspiring. My oldest daughter recently, we let her get an Instagram account. She has a cell phone. She's in 8th grade, but she's been begging for this Instagram account. She's like a
Right.
commercial. You can set my friend list and all that stuff. And eventually my wife was like, you know what? You can have it, but it's on my phone, not yours. And you can only have 15 minutes a day. And she was like, bet I can do that. And she sticks to it. And there are days she doesn't get to go on Instagram because my wife is working and it just doesn't work with the schedule or things like that. But it was just one of those things that I saw how she advocated for herself and then how she was able to accept something that wasn't her full want. And as an adult, that's hard
Mm.
because if I want something, but seeing her willing to compromise on this, that's a lesson to me in how I can compromise better and how I can ask and then let people get back to me instead of just like, and she hasn't pushed, just I want it on my phone or I want more time or I didn't get to do it yesterday. Can I
Right.
30 minutes? He's just like, this is the deal. I'm going to follow it. And that's kind of inspiring to me to just see like, I raise somebody who can advocate for themselves, compromise, and
Yeah.
stick to a plan.
Right. No, you make a really good point. Our kids have a lot thrown at them
Mhm.
today. that we did not have thrown at us when we were kids. And I think it's easy for us to try to, I don't know, say that things were better than as a kid or whatever, but you
Mhm.
bring up a great point. Our kids are navigating so much today and they're really doing it well. And I have a lot of hope having seen it in camp
Mhm.
for 32 years and seeing it now. There's a perspective there that I have that's really unique. And I know you as an educator, right, have a
Mhm.
similar perspective, right? But our kids are really doing a great job, right? And they're trying to move through the world like we did back then. They want to be accepted. They want to be loved by others. They want to make a difference in the world. And I have a lot of hope for the future that's taken
Yeah.
place. And it takes place with more frequency when parents are present, when they're mindful
Mhm.
of how they parent their kids and they give them the opportunity for those kids to grow well, grow strong, and grow with a little bit of grit. Michael, I want to thank you so much for being here today. I think this episode's a reminder that grit isn't built in big dramatic moments, but it's built in the awkward years and the tough days. It's built at camp, it's built at school, and most importantly, it's built at home, right? Your insight and your knowledge. I caught myself several times just sitting there listening to what you were saying and thinking, I got to retain that in my head. So thank you very much for being here today, Mike. It's
Oh,
been a
my
pleasure having
pleasure.
you on with us, man.
It's been a pleasure to get to come and talk about one of my favorite subjects, which is just growing good people.
It's awesome, man. Thank you. I'm honored to provide the Campfire Guide to Parenting podcast for all you parents out there. If you missed our last episode, we talked about raising emotionally healthy kids. And today we added another piece, how to help them face the hard stuff with strength and confidence. Thanks for listening to the Campfire Guide to Parenting. Keep going, keep growing, and keep that fire burning bright. Thanks for joining us. If you have a topic you'd like to hear, if there's something that's important to you, please leave it in the comments. Let us know. We would love to have that on the show.